and Seer. Good morning. Now I can see you all. Hello. So nice to see you all. Thank you for coming. So much fun. I'm excited about what we'll be talking today. So it's I'm not gonna do a long talk this morning because of what we're gonna be talking about, as you guys will see. I think it's one of the most important teachings that I can give you today. Um, and so we'll be talking about that. So I do invite you to, I think we can kind of begin. By the way, my dog is sleeping on my lap. So if at any point you kind of see me take something out and move it to the side, that's what that is. Not something, someone, my baby. He decided to sleep on mama's lap today. Ooh, okay. So so he'll be practicing deep sleep meditation this morning. um, and so I think we can, I see, I knew there was going to be somebody else. We might have a couple of other people join us. You know me, I like to be punctual, but we do what we can. So it's 11:03. Yeah, there's still more people coming in. So we'll start at 11:05. So just make sure to get nice and comfy. Please, just a couple of things to remember. The session is recorded and will be placed on YouTube. I do, however, highly invite your questions and comments at the end of our meditation practice, and any questions that you may have, as it's very helpful to the group, you know, and we're hearing this together. And so I highly invite you to ask questions. Your questions might help others, so consider it in that way. Okay, so I'm going to just allow one more minute and then we'll begin. Please make sure to be muted throughout our session. I'm just kind of making sure that everybody's muted here, and then we'll begin. One thing I've been kind of playing with the idea of is having a book club too. So I'll be sending out a newsletter on that. There's so many books I have that I was like, I was cleaning up, trying to get rid of books. No. I got rid of I think 12 books out of so many good books. I just don't, and I think it'd be nice to have like a book club. So I might, you know, do send me any time preferences that you guys might have about that. I'm going to do that. Probably be like half an hour. It won't be longer than that. But again, for our own personal self-growth and, you know, and our spiritual growth. So good. So we'll begin. Everybody, welcome. I had a couple of options of what to speak about today, but I wanna get to the core of the opportunity that we have here today, this morning. I began meditating when I was a kid. I was about, I think, 14, something like that, consciously meditating. But prior to that, when I was a little girl, I would spend a lot of hours outside looking at the stars, spending a lot of time in silence and solitude and quiet. And in that journey, I think I was kind of being prepared by life to what I would end up doing later. Throughout my years of meditation, I hadn't truly discovered the depth of meditation till I did silent retreats. And we'll be speaking about that a bit today. I want to speak about silence and how we can reach what is called the abiding presence. The presence of the true self, the presence of the part of you that sees this experience beyond thoughts and words, the vast spaciousness within your consciousness. We're going to speak about connecting to that space today. But first, let me explain what I mean by silence. I'll begin with an example of that. This morning, I was walking my dog, and there wasn't a single person out as I was walking by the lake. And I became aware of, and sometimes you might have moments like this, of becoming aware of your thoughts and your emotions and movement and the world around you, and this part of you observing what is going on. And that is the observer. So I came to that place of myself observing me as I was going through the experience. And then I thought, what is the self that is observing this moment? What is the self that is observing me in this moment? And that is what I mean by the seer. The part of you that is aware of all that is occurring. In silence, we can become aware of this abiding presence, this vast spaciousness that I felt when I was walking my dog this morning. I could feel the space between the thoughts, the presence beyond the body observing what is going on. And I understand that at times it might sound abstract, what I am speaking of, but it really is not. When you come into a place of quiet, you come to observe this most clearly. So a couple of years ago, I went through a very stressful period, and I decided to go on a couple of silent retreats to restore, inner balance. And in one of these, the very first one that I attended was so profound. It was in the dead of winter, and in a silent retreat, what occurs is we explore something called noble silence. I will be doing, by the way, a couple of silent retreats through Zoom, and hopefully at some point in person, depending on how things go with COVID-19. But noble silence means the following. It is a state of silence of speech, silence of the body, and silence of the mind. So I'm going to speak about each of them today. Silence of speech means no talking, essentially, right? So I am quiet with others. So in a retreat, for example, I am sitting next to others and we are not speaking. And speaking also includes body language, also includes gestures, like eye contact, smiling, making some connection at the physical with another individual. When you are in noble silence, there is no contact. There is a deep sense of solitude and silence and stillness. And so you are with yourself. You remain connected to the community, but you are with yourself. In addition to that, there is silence of speech, as I mentioned. So there is no reading, no talking. We essentially put words to the side and put conversations to the side, and we turn our attention inward. We come back to ourselves. In addition to that, there is the silence of the body. And again, this is all encouraging. Noble silence is encouraging you to go inward, encouraging you to meet the seer. Silence of the body includes silence of the eyes and silence of the ears. And what do I mean by silence of the eyes? Again, no eye contact. We tend to keep the eyes kind of low or less engaged. So let's say we see a beautiful flower, we engage with the flower, but you don't feel yourself kind of pulled into the flower, or like if you've ever seen your favorite flowers, you just kind of want to sit with them and smell them and be with them, and that kind of experience. And again, so you can see how that can take you away from yourself. You have to come back into the self. So these periods of retreat, or these periods of exploration of noble silence, which is what we're going to be doing today, our own little, half an hour, 1 hour experience of noble silence. It's this experience of turning away from the outer world and going inward, coming to the inside of the self, developing this sense of relating to the self. So we come back to quiet of the ear, or silence of the ear. That means no music. So like they say, when you're in a retreat, no music. As a matter of fact, they take your cell phone from you. So you fully disconnect from social media or computers or internet or anything like that. There is no outer stimuli. There is only inward stimuli, right? So we even disconnect from that. And there is, then that begins to encourage what's called silence of the mind. So then you remain with your thoughts and the objects of the mind, meaning the thoughts, the sounds, the way we tend to give additional commentary to what is happening, the way that, for example, additional commentary when I was walking my dog would be like, I don't know if you guys remember, but I hurt my toe, so it's still kind of achy. And so there's a couple of hills that I have to walk him through. And he just started pulling me, and I was like, okay, you pull me. That way I don't have to work so hard, right? So there's that additional commentary. I didn't need to add that additional commentary. I could just observe what is happening. And again, it's not that it's wrong or right. It's just for the purpose of what I'm working with, which is the development of a meditative practice outside of the meditation chair. Like, for example, for me, Sundays are very much about that. It's a day of Sunday mindfulness. That's why I call it Sunday mindfulness, because for years, for me, it was my own private practice of reconnecting to God through Sundays. In ancient times, Sunday, it's the day of the sun. And in many cultures, the sun was representative of God, of the inner light. And so for me, it's a day of exploring the inner light, that inner space of connection with grace. And this is my way of doing that. Now, so coming back to that, the silence of the mind is, can I observe the thoughts and return to the vast space that is observing the thoughts? Can I not fight the commentary, just observe the commentary as it occurs and come back to my intention, which is to be in silence, which is to allow that space of vastness to open up to me. So with the story, coming back again to the story of going to the retreat in the dead of winter. So it was the very first time that I ever did that. And I wasn't well prepared for the winter because, again, I'm from Florida, right? So I went to this retreat and I felt cold a lot of the time. So I drank a lot of tea. And so I would walk in, there were a lot of large pastures and a lot of nature around this space. And I would walk in the dark wood by myself. And because, again, during a process of noble silence, you are in solitude, you are with yourself, to again find this seer. So the concept behind it is, if I limit distractions, I bring my attention to what matters, to this deeper part of me. And so I recall one moment walking in the late afternoon, and it was dark, and looking at the way that the water, there were creeks, the way that the water would go through the rocks, the sounds. And what I began to notice, because I had been already a couple of days in noble silence, I became aware of deeper details that I wasn't aware of before. I became aware of my sense of smell, for example, became stronger. My sense of sound became stronger. I could hear very, very far away. My agility with my mind, because again, you're still you. You're still observing the mind, except that you're not as attached to the mind. You're not defining yourself as the mind. You experience the mind and the descriptions that it might give, but again, coming back to the vastness, coming back to the part of you observing the bigger picture of what is going on. And so I kept walking, and I encountered a lot of beings in nature, a lot of animals, and had wonderful, very private experiences with a lot of them. And the one that really stayed with me was I became aware of an animal in the forest. And it did not become aware of me for a while, which is what I wanted to mention with silence, because I was so silent, it didn't even know I was there. And so I got this opportunity to see this baby animal sleeping. And there was such privacy to that moment, such intimacy, it was such a gift to me to have seen that. And then it woke up, and then it began to stretch. And then I saw her beautiful brown eyes. And it was like a connection that occurred in that moment. There was a sense of non-verbal connection. We were held in the silence of not knowing each other's language, but having this moment of awareness of the presence within ourselves. And I recognized that that abiding presence that I'm speaking of is in me as well as it was in this beautiful animal that was sitting there just waking up. The abiding presence is within you and within all others. And in that moment of silence, in that moment of stillness, in that moment of recognizing that you are far beyond the mind, you can connect. And connect in a deeper way that words cannot describe. So that I wanted to share with you guys that the gift of that moment, because this is why I do this work, for the recognition of this oneness that is beyond words. And what I found interesting about that too is in other retreats after that with fellow human beings, I discover that moment of silence. And so at the closing, when we start coming to the end of the retreat, we all become aware of we're going to break silence. So there's a whole process to breaking silence. And I remember being in the dining hall thinking to myself, I don't want to speak again. I thought, I just want to be quiet. I want to be quiet. I want to just be like this for longer. And there are retreats that last for months, by the way. And because there was this understanding between all beings, all the people that were there, of there was no need to speak. We knew how to move the plates without saying, please give me the plate. We knew how to, where people sat and how to feel connected to someone without having to say a single word. There was this sense of being wrapped in each other in the silence that connected us. And so this is why silence is so important. There is this moment of still feeling connected to all beings, to all things, without having to say a single word. There was, I kept feeling like I was being held by the vastness, by the nothingness, by the wind, by the presence of all things that are alive, and this aliveness that is here when we do not speak and when we speak. The invitation of silence is that you get to see it fully for what it is. I recall also The very first time I went to New York City, I remember being in the subway for the first time, and I was, this was prior to 9/11, actually the year prior to 9/11. So I got very lucky to have been there before that. And I went to the subway. I was in the subway, and I remember looking around, and there were people sitting with newspapers from all over the world. There were people reading Japanese newspapers and Chinese papers and all kinds of languages. And I could see that it was different languages because of the letter on the newspapers. And I saw them all sitting there, all being quiet. And there was, again, this moment, same thing that I'm talking about in the retreat, of this oneness, of this group of people that don't know each other, that may have different points of views, that may have different perceptions, or being held by this silent space of a subway, going through the underground. And for that one moment, we're all in this oneness. And so I thought how language really wasn't needed in that moment, how words were not needed in that moment, how there was just this sense of community in the silence. And it was that same silent community that I experienced with the animal in nature. It was that same silent community that I experienced in the retreat when I was with all. And it's the same silent community that we experience with each other in class. I believe that that awareness of that silence truly brings us to peace. And perhaps in that sense of deep inner peace and stillness, we can bring peace, to the world, to hold someone without understanding that they may absolutely, and this is a thought that I had actually when I was in the retreat. I thought how beautiful to not speak of politics, to not speak of, because I was vegan, I kept thinking, I wonder how many people here eat meat, and I wonder how many people do this. And there was a moment of, it doesn't matter. In this moment, we're all one. And there is this humanity that bonds us, And so this is the invitation of silence. This is the invitation that I invite you to consider today. That sense of connecting again to that vastness, that sense of, again, connecting to the self beyond words, the self beyond words. So we will be practicing today Mauna, which is the Sanskrit word for noble silence. It is the returning to the abiding presence, the oneness that I am speaking of. And I know of no other way to find it than in that space of silence. To me, there is such intimacy in silence. There is such love that can be experienced in that state where no words are needed. It's beyond words. And so I will be speaking more about retreats in the future. As I mentioned, I'm planning to do a couple of them through Zoom. I know of other fellow practitioners who are doing that, and I welcome doing something like that. So in today's meditation, we will be practicing how we set up for this depth of silence. And I wanted to start our session today by taking the scariness out of silence. I think it can sometimes, from what I've heard from others, be scary to enter into a space of silence of, what do you mean no internet? What do you mean no cell phone? What do you mean no TV? It's like, what does that even mean? Where there is no sense of mental or emotional stimuli, but this sense of returning to allowing everything to settle, allowing all the distractions to go away. And we come back to the silence of the waves, and we come back to this space of peace. So I invite you to consider that today. The other piece I'd like to give you for homework is to consider giving yourself an hour a day of absolute silence. Absolute silence, meaning what I just said, silence of speech. So not speaking to anybody else in the house. One way of doing that might be to put a little sign on the door saying in silence. As a matter of fact, when we are in retreat, we actually wear a little sticker that says in noble silence, which means don't speak to me right now because I am doing this deep inner work. That would be one thing. If you have children, might be a fun thing to do with them. Hey, let's do an hour of, you put the timer. When the timer rings, then we can speak again. That might be something that might be fun to consider. And there is really just going inward. It's a period of, again, solitude and seeking stillness and not seeking stillness, allowing stillness, because stillness is really already there. And I was walking my dog this morning. That was so clear. There's a place of stillness you cannot run away from. It's always there. I want to share this because it's funny, and then we're going to go into meditation. I remember the first time I encountered, one of the first times, that I encountered that sense of stillness and quiet and peace. The observer part of me that's always in peace was when I was a kid, and I got really upset. And I was crying. I was so upset. And I remember being aware of this part of me that was observing me cry and observing me, go through this stress. And I kept trying to grab it and tell it, stop being so quiet, stop being so calm, be pissed off with me, be upset with me. And it wouldn't. And so it was so funny to me because to this day, I remember it's always been there. It's this part of you that's always there. It is always at peace. It is always calm. No matter what you go through, it is a friend to you. It is it's always there. So let's explore that part today, shall we? So let's find a comfortable position. I may have to move my baby for a moment. So my doggy sleeping on my lap, so sorry, those of you that came in late. Okay. So let's get nice and comfortable. I'm going to, I invite you for this one in particular to close the eyes, just to again invite the silence of the eyes as well. One moment. So okay, no, it's not there. Okay. So first, allowing ourselves to find a position of comfort and ease. Beginning our meditation by scanning the body, any places that might need relaxation and in this moment, and inviting those parts to be relaxed. Allowing the breath and the body to find comfort and ease effortlessly. Effortlessly placing the awareness on the breath. And allowing yourself to hold the intention becoming aware of this part of you, observing this moment, sensing this moment, observing the breath, Sensing the way the body feels as it sits or lays. Observing any thoughts. And can I allow these thoughts to be just where they are? Perhaps inviting a sense of effortlessness in our observation, in our noticing of what is here. Can I allow what shows up to be just as it is? The thoughts, the sensations, and surrendering the need to comment, the need to add to the experience. Entering a space of non-verbal awareness. Sensing the way the breath flows in the body. The way the clothing feels. And becoming aware of the vast space. The open space of awareness. Sensing the space around you, behind you and to the sides of you. Noticing the vastness of space. Sensing the space between objects around you, above you, below you. Perhaps the space beyond the room. Becoming aware of the furthest away sound. And the space between you and sounds. Noticing the silence. Allowing the body and the mind to settle. Noticing the exhale. And allowing yourself to let go of all effort. Stopping. And simply being with the breath or the sensations as they arise. And noticing the part of you observing you breathe. Sensing the thinker of the thoughts, the space behind the thoughts. observing the space between sounds. The space between thoughts. Returning to that part of you that observes what is here, that is aware of you in this moment. And feel this part of you arising from the heart or behind the mind. The part of you sensing the sensations or noticing the sound. Allowing now the mind to be quiet, the body to be quiet, by simply and effortlessly observing the spaces between sounds, between words, between thoughts, allowing yourself to rest in the vastness that surrounds you, surrendering with the breath, letting go of all effort. Resting in the spaces of silence, in the spaces of calm in the body. Surrendering all effort. Observing and sensing without judgment, without commentary. Surrendering to the nonverbal space, aware of you in this moment. aware of the silence and the stillness that is now here. Bringing gentleness and softness to this experience. How can I observe this moment with kindness? How can I soften as I breathe, as I observe and return to the silence? Noticing the part of you aware of the silence, the part of you that is completely in stillness right now. The deepest, calmest self. And gently becoming aware of the body, sitting or laying in this moment. Becoming aware of the breath, of your fingertips, of the hands. And very gently taking a deeper, longer, more relaxing breath. And beginning to return your awareness to this present moment in time. Observing yourself returning. Noticing the part of you in stillness and quiet. The part of you that is deeply calm and peaceful. And beginning to come back into the now by opening the eyes, exhaling completely out, fully back into the present moment. And as you are ready, please go ahead and write down your experience if you like, or go ahead and ask any questions or share your experience with the group. If you would like to share at some point, please do make sure to raise your hand so that I can see you, and then follow by unmuting yourself. And do take your time. I would like to also mention that we will end on time at noon. However, I'd like to leave it open, and I don't mind staying a bit longer today. If you have any questions, I'll make sure to, or comment, I'll make sure to be here. And if you need to leave on time, please go ahead and do so. No worries. Don't feel pressured to stay, as I will make sure that this is recorded. So who would like to share their experience, if you like, or Cece, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
It's interesting, Anna, that you talk about it, that we are all connected, that we don't really need to speak or look or anything. Because today you're talking about silence, and since yesterday, I don't really feel, I don't want to talk with anybody, but not because of bad, I just don't want it. I don't want to answer my phone. I don't want to have a conversation. I just want to be quiet.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, it's interesting. Noticing periods of time when you feel like you want to withdraw a bit or you want to go inward a bit. Always, I think it's an invitation to become aware and conscious as to why we do the things we do. And I certainly invite that in all processes of daily life, to ask, okay, why am I feeling like I need some space, and why am I feeling like I need some silence? And certainly to journal, right, Cece, that, and thank you.
Thank you.
And it is also, I don't know if you guys notice, but there are moments when we're in meditation that it's almost like we don't want to come back. I always hear this from people. It's like, oh, I don't want to come back. I want to stay there longer. It almost feels like we're merged into the silence. Or I love the imagery of, you know, if you've ever been in the ocean, I mean, you just kind of drop into the ocean. It's that sense of like being swallowed by the silence, or that sense of floating into it. And so it's a sense of surrender to that quiet, calm space, vastness that is always here. It really has no words. And it's, I often play around with the idea of having a thesaurus next to me to look at different descriptions of silence and quiet and vastness and spaciousness. But it truly is a nonverbal space of returning to the wholeness of who you are, and the awareness of the self that is here. So thank you, Cece, for sharing. Who else would like to share? I think Samantha.
Yeah. So it's been a whirlwind week with a lot happening, a lot, good things, but a lot. And just before the meditation, I felt like there was so much. And as we were going into that silent space, the observer was looking at all the images of this stuff that was happening, and then all of my body just calmed. And it's like this whirlwind is happening and it needs to happen. But there's another part that is just observing it and saying, it's not saying anything, but the feeling is, this is all inconsequential. Let it happen and just calm. And it was a very beautiful moment.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's
Yeah.
profound. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. It's I love how you mentioned it's all inconsequential. There is, when we are in the space of the vastness and the spaciousness and the abiding observer presence, we are in the space of eternity. And in that space of eternity, things may seem as inconsequential. And yet I mentioned something during our meditation of, can I become aware of this space of vastness and of the observer with a sense of softness and kindness and gentleness. And I invite you to do that this week, Samantha, as you're exploring this. Because can I also be kind to the part of me that is going through these difficulties or through these experiences of whirlwind, as you mentioned? Can I hold her as she's going through this with love and tenderness? Yeah, and in that vastness and that spaciousness, we have that capacity.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're not difficulties. They're just beautiful, beautiful things. And a
Beautiful.
lot.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for clarifying that. Good. Thank you. Who else would like to share? Anybody else? Just want to make sure because I heard one more. Yes, Ali. Hi.
Hi, let me
Hi.
unmute. It's as Simon says, a beautiful sensation. But was weird in one part because was like my body felt heavier. Was thankful for the relaxing. Either I felt my bones and say thank you to be relaxed. I have a couple of heavy weeks. But at the same time, I feel lighter. I don't know, both things at the same time. It's like myself lighter, my body heavier and relaxed.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's matter and spirit, really, when we start looking at it a little deeper. There's the matter of the body, right? The body made into physical form. And then there's this other aspect of you that is vastness and spirit, watching and present of what is here and now. And can I hold both with kindness? Can I hold both experiences of who I am with this sense of love and compassion and love? I think it's beyond compassion, but it's this sense of, can I, to come back for a moment to my story of watching myself walking my dog, can I be kind to the Anna Maria that is still healing her toe, as she's walking up the hill with her dog? Can I be kind to that part of me going through whatever that experience might be? Whether it's the feeling of overwhelmment within a whirlwind, or whether it's the experience of the heaviness of the body, whatever that might be, that contrast. Can I become aware of whatever the contrast is that I'm experiencing and still hold that in kindness, still hold that in with an abiding presence of love and kindness? Does that make sense? Thank you for sharing that. I love that because it really brings us the awareness of a spirit and matter, both being here. Thank you. Anyone else would like to share their experience? I think I had seen one more. Anybody else?
Me, Danielle.
Hi, Danielle.
It's not so much the experience itself because I felt like I was in and out of it, but it got me thinking about something that maybe I observed throughout my life, and I don't know if it's true, but I feel like maybe I've lived my life mainly as a watcher and not so much in the experience. I feel like the way I described most of my past, my earlier years, I felt like I was more not awake. Even though I was experiencing life, I wasn't fully in it. As opposed to now, I feel more present in it. So I feel like when you speak about that watcher and that self, I feel like I was more with that self than in the space that I am in now.
Oh, I always love your comments and questions. Thank you so much for that. May I add now?
Sure.
Or was there something else? Thank you. Because it's kind of hard for me sometimes to tell if I'm interrupting or not, because I get inspired, you know me, guys. So I love your question for this reason, because sometimes words can limit what we're trying to say. When I spoke of the seer and the observer, there was also this sense of this vastness that envelops everything, right? That space is very active. It is not a restful space whatsoever. It is filled with lightness. It's very similar to other teachers that speak of emptiness, you know, returning to the emptiness. I myself don't use that word because it is not empty.
Right.
It is very much alive and present. Go ahead.
No, just agreeing.
Yeah, it is very much alive and present. And so it is a conscious space of who you are. If I am in a state, so the goal, if there were a goal, and I really don't like that word, but if there were a goal, would be to be this abiding presence over this vast self that you are in all ways, in all ways, in all aspects of yourself, in your daily life and practice. And so when I have those moments of being the seer, for example, let me give you an example actually this morning with my dog. You know, he has the tendency of kind of wanting to taste the ground. And of course, I'm like an overprotective mom. I'm like, don't do that. And so I'm watching him do that. And so again, I'm practicing being the observer from the space of this observer self watching that or becoming aware of that. There is this sense of timing of when to act. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's almost like a timing of when it's enough that he's done that, a timing of when it's time to move and return home. There's an activeness to it, a consciousness to it that tells us when the next step is, or it's an active, intelligent space. So I don't want you thinking that it's just, I'm just kind of being here, or I'm just kind of, it is a space of non-doing, but it is a dance. It is a space that awakens what the next step is, awakens what the next thought is. It's a space of awakening. So when you mention being awake, I believe that this space is about that. It's returning to a sense of awakefulness, but it's bigger than us.
Right.
It's a place of being aware of all that is here, is encompassing, abiding presence. It's aware of the whole of us together as one. When I spoke of silence, for example, in the retreats, there was a moment I remember kind of sitting and just watching people, you know, picking their food and sitting and stuff. It was almost like a dance. There was almost like this sense of, you knew exactly when to pick the plate and exactly when to pick the cup. And it was just this movement of all things falling into place in this rhythm, in
flow.
this, like, yes, a flow. Thank you. This exact timing to things. And so it is active. It is very much active. It is knowing exactly when to say the right thing at the right time. Or because again, what I believe that occurs when we explore these spaces of silence and the greater self is that we return to the divine intelligence and the part of us that knows the perfect timing for things, the perfect moment to say something. And even the word perfect limits it, but you know what I mean? It's like, it just knows, like a jigsaw puzzle where things fit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, to me, it's kind of like when you're in that space, it's you're there, you're you, but you're disconnected. You see what I'm saying? Disconnected from the socio-political world is the way I call it. So the socio-political world that we live in, the world of country, the world of mom, the world of dad, the world of my work, the world of all these things, the world of I want to have a baby, the world of let's get that car, all of that disconnects you from that self. But that self is still here to experience that in order to discover itself.
Correct.
So it's like this cycle, you know, and then I think we all get caught up in the present socio-political self and forget the real self. And for me, the self that you're describing, the watcher, the observer, is the real self.
Correct.
That's here to learn.
Correct. The part of you that is...
Yeah, so I feel like when I was growing up, I was more the observer, meaning things were happening and socio-political world was happening, but I wasn't really in it because I was disconnected from it.
I was actually looking for a quote that I wasn't sure if to say today because it will lead us down a whole other talk. Thank you for sharing that, Dani. And it essentially says, the self has nothing to do with the mind or personality. And I think that goes well with what you're mentioning. It is beyond. But beyond doesn't mean it's more important. Beyond doesn't mean it's superior. Beyond means it's above it, surrounds it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So because we need our mind, we need our personality. How else will we do calculus? How else are you gonna like know, if I buy this bread loaf and this butter, how much is it gonna be? Like how are you gonna know that?
Right.
So it's knowing there's a place for things. Like in nature, there's a place for things. There's a place. And so if I can understand what the place is, and really the one that sees the place is the abiding presence, is the seer, is this higher, wiser self that is you. And so which we will continue to explore. And there's much more to say about your question. So please do bring it up next week again,
I will.
Danielle, if that's okay. Thank you. And it may evolve, from now till then. Thank you all for coming. I don't want to go past 7 minutes of past our time, if at all possible. I do apologize. I started, I ramble at the beginning of our session, but there's just so much to say about this. And so we will explore it in our next class. We'll continue with working with silence. And I'll get a little bit deeper as to more how we can go into greater levels of the noble silence and explain other steps that we can do through our daily practice to continue that work. So I am grateful for all of you having been here today. As always, I send you all my love and light. Thank you all for having been here. And please do remember, any questions you have, feel free to email them to me. I send you all my love, and I see you next Sunday. Blessings. Bye.